Rabbil Alameen. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds. We welcome our friends in South Africa, the United States, and around the world to this week's edition of A Conversation with El-Hajj Mauri Saalakhan. I'm pleased to be your host, coming to you once again through the Salam Media Network out of Johannesburg, South Africa. Salam Media is an online portal for humanitarian journalism. We don't just report the news, we advise you on what you can do about it. Let me begin by expressing my apologies for the technical difficulties we experienced that gave us this late start this morning. With that said, I expect that we are going to have a very, very fruitful conversation with our two guests, the first being Rabbi Feldman from Neturei Karta International. This broadcast is a special Ramadan series. It's part of a special Ramadan series titled Faith Beyond Ritualism. And it's going to be in two parts. The first part will be with Rabbi Dovid Feldman of Neturei Karta International, and the second will be with Imam Zaid Shakir. Now, before we begin our conversation with Rabbi Feldman, I'd like for us to see a piece of video that reflects what he and the community that he represents is known for. Let's see that piece of video, brother. Do you have it? Okay.
Religions. which is causing this conflict. The state of Israel does not represent all Jews, and certainly does not represent the Jewish religion. According to Jewish religion, all of this is criminal. All of this is forbidden. Basics of Jewish belief teaches that Jews are in a divinely decreed exile. We are even forbidden to create a sovereignty for ourselves. But especially when this is by killing, stealing, oppressing an entire people. This is not only criminal according to international law. This is a true violation of Judaism. And still, those people who choose not to follow Judaism misuse that very same religion to justify all those crimes forbidden in Judaism. The root cause is this criminal occupation which is oppressing an entire people. We have to end this occupation in its entirety. If people will ask me my advice, the leaders of Israel should wake up tomorrow morning and step out of the Knesset and return the land back to indigenous population. I guarantee peace.
Okay, welcome back. And again, my apologies for this very late and kind of clumsy start. These were technical difficulties beyond our control. Without any further ado, let's bring our first guest on, Rabbi Feldman. Greetings of peace and good morning to you, Rabbi Dovid Feldman.
Good morning. Nice meeting you again. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Let's begin where that piece of video we just saw left off. I'm not sure what city you were in, if you were in New York or if you were on the West Coast, but
I believe that was in Montreal, I believe so.
Oh, that was Montreal in Canada. My goodness. So this is what many of us who are familiar with Neturei Karta International, this is what we know you are known for, making that distinction between Judaism and Zionism. Please expound on that for those who are watching this video, this broadcast, this live broadcast that we are now engaged in, who may not be as familiar with you and your community as I am.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me, and it's a pleasure for me to meet you and to be able to speak to the beautiful audience that you have. First of all, let me clarify that this is what I am presenting is not my personal view or the view of some people within my community or my organization. This is simple Judaism. This is what Judaism stood for thousands of years until this relatively new distortion of Judaism called Zionism. Now, to make this very simple, we need to understand that there is a great difference between Judaism and Zionism. Judaism is a religion only. It's about the belief in Almighty God, the practice of His commandments, nothing else. No politics, no nationalism to it. For example, I happen to be a Jewish American. I'm Jewish by the religion I follow. I'm American by nationality, and there is no contradiction. I don't need a nationality in order to be Jewish. And I'm sure you, being Muslim, can understand this very, very simple. Versus Zionism is a total different concept altogether. It's about nationalism. It happens to be that the movement of Zionism claims, God forbid, that you no longer have to believe in God in order to be Jewish. You just have to support the national movement of Zionism. This is not only not Judaism. This is the contrast of Judaism. This is the uprooting of Judaism. Now, before we begin any conversations regarding what is happening on the ground, this is what we need to realize and understand before we start. Now, when we are seeing a state of Israel committing so many crimes, in no way can they represent the religion of Judaism. This is not Judaism in any way. Now, because this is so contrary to Judaism, because this is the total contrast, the direct contradiction to Judaism. Therefore, you have masses of Jewish people the world over, including in occupied Palestine, Israel today, who are in vehement opposition to all that the state of Israel stands for. Now, not all of them come out in public, and here is where I come in, and where my organization or my movement comes in. It's our duty to raise the voice of those masses in the, I'm talking about religious Jews, anti-Zionist Jews, raise their voices in opposition to everything which is happening. And I always say, so many people can understand this. Intimidation is massive. Not only in Israel, where they physically attack, harass, and torture, and sometimes assassinate whoever stands up and oppose them. And mind you, not only Palestinians, but Jewish people as well. If my colleagues in Jerusalem and other cities stand up, if they are silent, then it's okay. But if they stand up in a public opposition, then they face torture on a regular basis. But it's not only in Israel, it's across the world. I'm in the United States, so much intimidation is around. Now, I always say, you never ask a question why more people don't come out. You always ask a question, how come that those people who are brave enough to stand up and to challenge this movement of Zionism, how they can do it. But you can only imagine how many more people are behind us when you see our voice out there. Unless we would have this massive support behind us, we would never be able to be out there or out here today in this interview.
Mm-hmm. Right now, there is a war that's raging in Iran and in other parts of the region, the Middle East region. Is there a sizable Jewish community in Iran? And what has been the relationship between the Jewish community in Iran and the government and the non-Jewish majority of Iran?
This is an excellent, very crucially important topic. First of all, let me tell you, we are dealing now with the war in Iran. I am presently in Chicago. I attended Friday a rally regarding the Israeli war in Iran, assassination of the supreme leader. I'm in transit now on the way to Dallas, Texas, to speak at the rally there as well. Now, this point that you are raising about the Jewish community being a small minority in Iran amongst the vast majority of Muslims, this is an exact, essential, important example for people to see, view, and understand what's behind all of this, because this is in total contrast to massive Zionist propaganda. Iran is one example, Palestine is another example, and I would say this in this way. Palestine, Arabs, or Muslims were never the enemy of the Jewish people. Nor is Iran today. We lived in Palestine, we lived in other Muslim countries for the longest time, despite any differences of religions, and we lived in a beautiful, perfect peace until the movement of Zionism came into Palestine and destroyed it all. This was not 1948, this was in the 1920s, where all these problems began because of this movement of Zionism with a very clear agenda of overtaking the power and oppressing the indigenous population. When we come to Iran, we have presently now, I believe it's over 25,000 Jewish people living in peace. I visited Iran a number of times. I met the Jewish communities. We're talking about a minority that don't deserve representation in the government. Still, the government respects, not only the government, the country as a whole respects this minority, gives them religious rights, and give them minority status, and they do have a representation in the government. This is something that the world should not only appreciate, the world should learn from Iran this clarity that while they are opposing crimes committed in Palestine, which is a righteous cause and every right-minded person should oppose these crimes, But in the same time, they respect Judaism as a religion. They respect the Jewish people as a people. Now, this distinction, this differentiation, this is something that people should learn of, that we must understand not to generalize all Jews, not only because this is unjust for the Jewish people to generalize all of them, but it's also very important, this distinction, because if you generalize all, what happens then you fall in to the Zionist trap, to their propaganda, and then they blame you that you are anti-Semitic because you blame all, because you criticize all Jews. Now listen to this, I always say, generalization is wrong. Generalize all people many times ends up being racist. But listen to this, when we find an individual generalizing all Jews, who is doing that generalization? This is not an individual anti-Semitic European or any terrorist Arab, so-called, that is generalizing. The people generalizing all Jews is Netanyahu and his people, who insist that they represent all Jews. They insist that they represent the Jewish religion. This is so wrong, and this is so unjust, and ends up, in addition to all catastrophe inflicted yesterday in Palestine, then in Gaza, today in Iran, and followed in Lebanon. This is unfortunately so much disaster, but it's also disaster for the Jewish people as well. Every right-minded person has to stand up. First of all, oppose what is wrong and understand to differentiate between peoples, not generalize everyone, because this is dangerous for us all.
Mm-hmm. I thank you for that, Rabbi Feldman. The term anti-Semitism and anti-Semitic has been greatly weaponized, and this is one of the primary verbal assaults that's used to defend the indefensible and to justify that which is unjustifiable, both here in the United States and in other parts of the West. Given what has been taking place in occupied Palestine for more than 2 years now, and the amount of awakening that has taken place across the globe, here in the United States and in other parts of the world, how optimistic are you that now, in the face of this very unfortunate war on Iran, that we may be at a turning point in public consciousness around this issue? How optimistic are you?
Well, nobody can know exactly what's going to happen, but we are seeing already unfolding, as you mentioned, the past 2 years. It is going on already for over 77 years, this occupation in Palestine. But the past 2 years was different, because the Zionist movement went to that far extreme level that it did wake up the masses throughout the world. Wherever I travel, I see a dramatic change. Now with the war in Iran, is not different. It just plays into this sad situation and this troubling unfolding, where before people had a chance to pause or to heal from the tragedies that happened in Gaza, here they are again in another war, and who knows what that's going to lead into. People are moved by what is going on. People are waking up. I always say, it's very sad to say this, but unfortunately it has caused this tremendous price of so many people, so many innocent men, women, and children, little babies, be killed in order for humanity to wake up. This is an embarrassment for humanity. But after this happened, at least we see something coming out of it, that masses of people do wake up. Now, whether we're going to see a change, if we see the change in public opinion, naturally we can hope to Almighty God that bigger changes will take place. We believe that evil will not succeed forever. We have no idea how long this is going to last. We don't know how long God will allow for this evil to continue. Almighty God gives a free choice for every individual. You can choose good or you can choose bad. That doesn't mean that when you choose bad, that bad will be successful. The verse says, why are you violating the word of Almighty God? It will not be successful. No wonder. After all these decades, with all these attempts for peace plans and all of this, never they are successful. No wonder, because we knew this before. Our spiritual leaders in the very beginning predicted that this will not be successful. This will only lead into massive disaster and bloodshed, and this is what we are witnessing. Unfortunately, we are traumatized. We are scared by what can happen in the future. We pray to Almighty God that this should end. And listen to this. People, Zionist propaganda always manipulates the minds of the masses that they are acting in self-defense because the Jewish people need a safe haven. Self-defense. First of all, this is not a defense. This is offensive from the day it started. But it's not only this. Jewish people are facing so much tragedy, so much hate, and so much danger because of what is being done in our name. I say, and this is simple, this occupation needs to stop. These crimes need to stop, not only for the sake of those oppressed people that deserve a better future. This needs to stop for the sake of the Jewish people who deserve safety and security. We hope, we pray to Almighty God that this should stop soon. And we hope this stops peacefully with no more suffering of anyone. Unfortunately, we had so much loss of lives on all sides. Once this stops, we can hope to be able to see that beautiful peace that did exist in Palestine, did exist in other Muslim countries, does exist in Iran. And we hope to see this in the future. But we need to realize and raise the awareness, educate others, and do everything we can to have the people in the political level understand that humanity needs a change. We have to stop this injustice. We have to bring peace for all.
Indeed. And yes, indeed, I echo that 100%, Rabbi Feldman. And what has been taking place in that tortured part of the world that is ironically often referred to as the land of the prophets does have global implications. Just recently, there was a tragic attack on one of the largest Jewish communities in the United States, if not the largest, Temple Israel in Bloomfield, Michigan. And thankfully, no one was killed except for the perpetrator of that tragic incident. And I did some background research on both the individual and on the community itself, and what I found was that the man who committed that act of retaliatory, in his mind, in his thinking, aggression, was someone who had suffered a tremendous loss, a recent loss in his family, and in Lebanon, and that is what motivated him to do what he did. And from the way I see it, he did what he did with the intent or the understanding that he was not going to survive that. He expected, I believe, to die, and that in that attack. And again, he was the only one who died. My understanding is that one of the security personnel was seriously injured, but he is expected to recover. No one else was injured or killed, thank God. But I also discovered in the background research that I did on Temple Israel is that this has been one of the strongest supporters, proponents of Zionism in the United States, a staunch supporter of the apartheid state of Israel. And so with all that being said, I mean, what is your message to fellow Jews here in the United States, especially here in the United States, given the state of crisis that we hear in other parts of the West and tragically right on the front line in the Middle East are now engulfed in? What is your message to your own tribe, so to speak, Rabbi?
Well, yes, that's a good point. What we are trying to explain to other Jews is, first of all, that according to Judaism, the movement of Zionism is wrong. It's wrong on all levels. It's wrong theology, and it's wrong between. There's two parts of Jewish law. There's between man and God, and between man and you fellow neighbors or friends. This is wrong in each and every way how you look at this. But in addition to this, when you're talking about a tragic incident that happened, and unfortunately this is not the first time something like this is happening. I didn't have a chance personally to do that research you did, but it's beautiful that you did that research. This is unfortunately, sadly, painfully expected. I always say what happened on October 7th, even though nobody is happy with loss of lives. But unfortunately, after all that happened, as Secretary General of the United Nations said 3 months after October 7th, that what happened didn't happen out of a vacuum. It happened due to decades of occupation. Now, nobody is justifying each and every action that happens, but we need to understand where this comes from, what the cause is. Why do we need to understand this? Because if we are truly concerned for a better future, unless we understand what's behind, then we would never reach a better future. I try to explain to Jewish people, and especially those who support the movement of Zionism, support the state of Israel for one reason or another. Those people might be ignorant, those people might be manipulated from mainstream media, they might have no idea what is going on, they might lack so much information. But I try to explain them for the sake of everyone, but specifically for the Jewish people. This is not in favor of the Jewish people. If crimes are being committed in our name, if so many people are suffering because of what is being done, supposedly on our behalf, something will happen in reaction, not because we enjoy it, not because we want it to happen, but just because this is a natural reaction. And because we don't want to see this happen, therefore we need to do something about it. But anti-Semitism is not going to help. Fighting back is not going to help. It's only going to exacerbate anti-Semitism. There is a traditional Jewish way how to address anti-Semitism. But the first step is to rethink our deeds, to rethink our approach, referring to the Jewish people. We need to stop all these crimes. Many people listen. Many people change their mind, especially recently. But we need to do much more, and we need help to get the message across.
Indeed. Now, Rabbi Feldman, my understanding was that you will need to leave us at 8:50. We've got 3 minutes. What final message would you like to convey to the world at large, and especially to those of us here in the United States and in other parts of the West? I mean, one of the One of the unfortunate realities of where we are right now is that it's not just the United States that government that has had the back of the apartheid state of Israel and its policies. Other Western capitals are also in sync with the same line of thinking and support. What would you like to end this interview in terms of messaging to these leaders here in the United States and in other parts of the West? What would you like to say? And what would you like to leave the American people across the board?
First of all, if you allow me, let me give my short message to the suffering people who suffer from this occupation. Please realize and understand there are masses of Jewish people, including in the Holy Land, including in occupied Palestine, who are troubled by what is happening, especially when it's being done in our name. But our message to the West, to the Western governments and to the Western people, we do realize that in many occasions, politicians or people decide to extend a hand to the Jewish people because we suffered in our history, which is true, and we highly appreciate any kindness extended to the Jewish people. But in the same time, we want to clarify that if Jewish people suffered in the past, there are people who are suffering today. And we need to extend a hand to all suffering people. But we as Jewish people, we say that supporting Israel, even though some people decide to do so out of kindness to the Jewish people, but people need to realize and understand that supporting Israel is not support to the Jewish people. The Muslim people protected us and respected us for the longest time. We lived in peace, and unfortunately this peace was destroyed because of the occupation of Palestine and the existence of the state of Israel. It is the ongoing crimes, Israeli crimes, which is fueling this endless cycle of bloodshed where everyone suffers. If one wants to extend a hand for the Jewish people, please don't support the state of Israel. Let's do everything we can to stop this injustice, stop this rebellion against God, stop this violation of Judaism. This will bring a beautiful future for all of us.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Feldman. That is an excellent note for us to end this segment on. And may Allah bless you and your community. And may Allah Ta'ala bless us all to see peace, real peace, come to the Holy Land and to other parts of this very tortured at the moment world. May Allah bless the rest of your day, sir.
Amen. Thank you.
Let's go to the first commercial break, and we'll see you on the other side, inshallah. We'll see you on the other side.
Education, from books to files to rulers. In fact, any accessory Any accessory we need. Freedom Stationery. Education for the nation. What does accessory mean?
Elite Basmati, available throughout the Middle East, and now for the very first time exclusive to South Africa, brought to you by Murchison Spice, Peter Marisburg's most famous specialty store. Elite Basmati, available in aromatic white and golden cellar, is packaged in a world-class facility in India and is filled with wholesome goodness for your well-being. Elite Basmati rice by Murchison Spice. For trade inquiries, contact Mohammed on 033 387 2121. Murchison Spice.
World-class financial services only at Sapphire Global, your financial partner. If you are looking for Islamic, Sharia, and ethical financial products, look no further. Sapphire Global offers a wide range of financial service offerings from short-term to life and investments. A full-service center with all financial requirements under one brand. Our highly skilled and experienced consultants are ready to help protect your financial future. Contact us on 041 001 0184 or visit our website on www.sapphireglobalfs.com. Sapphire Global is an authorized financial services provider.
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042 203 1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of
You are listening to Salam Media live from our headquarters in South Africa. This is Salam Media, keeping you company this Ramadan.
Welcome back. If you are just joining us, we are engaged in the part 4 of a special series that we have been engaged in during the blessed month of Ramadan, Faith Beyond Ritualism. And what I'd like to do now is there's a very special piece of video. We're not going to be able to see it at all. It's quite lengthy. It's about a half-hour-long conversation that Sheikh Omar Suleiman had with Reverend Munther Isaac in occupied Palestine. This was a while back, but I think it's a very important conversation for us to revisit, given where we are right now. It is my understanding that the majority of Christian Palestinians have been emptied out of Gaza. They have been part of the casualties, the huge casualties. They were a numerical minority in Gaza. You know, the overwhelming majority are Muslims, but this was or is a highly respected minority within the Gaza population that interacted with their Muslim brethren in very peaceful ways. And some of the oldest institutions within Christendom are found in occupied Palestine, including Gaza. And subhanAllah, the madness that we have seen, that we have witnessed over, the past 2.5 years has has taken a tremendous toll on the Christian population. So, but this was a conversation that these two religious leaders had some months back. And what I'd like for us to do now is see a portion of this very important dialogue that took place between, again, Reverend Mumther Isaac and Imam or Sheikh Dr. Omar Suleiman. Let's see the video, my brother.
Reverend Dr. Mundhir Mundhir Isaac, it's with you, someone that I've had the blessing of getting to know virtually. We were supposed to connect in person on one of your trips to the...
We must make it happen for sure.
Inshallah. But it's an absolute pleasure to have you. Thank you for taking the time out, joining us live from Bethlehem. I think that for many of us, we really got to know you through your famous sermon in 2023, Christ in the Rubble, where you talk about Isa alayhi salam, Jesus, peace be upon him, in the nativity scene. And I think the cognitive dissonance of particularly Western Christians and how they, have somehow allowed, obviously some denominations, particularly on the Christian right, have allowed their denominations to be hijacked by a Zionist narrative. And you spoke very passionately.
Never again should mean never again to all peoples. Never again has become yet again. Yet again to supremacy. Yet again to racism. And yet again to genocide. And sadly, never again has become yet again for the weaponization of the Bible and the silence and complicity of the Western Church. Yet again for the Church siding with power, the Church siding with the empire.
It was very moving to many people. In fact, I know a church here, Friendship West, Reverend Freddie Haynes, who actually, along with some activists, they recreated that scene, and I believe that became a book. But you're at the center of all of this as a Palestinian Christian. And for many people, they've been seeing the scenes, particularly this past week. Palm Sunday, over 40,000 Christians barred from worshiping on their holy day. El-Ahli Baptist Hospital bombed, people killed once again. Prior to that, one of the oldest churches in Christianity in Gaza, which in and of itself says a lot about the history of Palestine, bombed. Can you tell us what it's like being a Palestinian Christian, trying to explain to particularly Western Christians who have come under the spell, if you will, in regards to the Zionist narrative and justified prior to genocide, occupation, and apartheid?
For us, it begins by actually trying to explain to people that Palestinian Christians exist. Because in the Zionist discourse, maybe Palestine was an empty land, or all Palestinians are Muslims. And to me, it's surprising that we even have to explain this, given that Jesus was born in Bethlehem. And in our faith, according to our faith, he was risen in Jerusalem. The first church was in Jerusalem. The surprise should be, is not that there are Palestinian Christians. The surprise should be if we did not exist, because there has always been a continuous Christian presence. And that in itself, it feels strange to even have to remind people about this. But then beyond that, you have to begin dismantling, and this is the most difficult part, a systematic discourse that has been in the minds of most Western Americans that, as I said, not only all Palestinians are Muslims, but that's the problem actually. And they like to frame the conflict as a conflict between two forces, the forces of good being the Judeo-Christian tradition, the forces of evil being Arabs and Muslims. And then all of a sudden here we come as Palestinian Christians and we say, wait a minute, not only is this the wrong framing, the problem is not religious, the conflict is not religious, it's about occupation, it's about the colonization of Palestine. There is a beginning, 1948, everything that led to that. And as I continue to argue today, it's wrong to talk about not just a conflict, but a religious conflict. When you make the situation in Palestine, when you frame it as a religious conflict, the conclusion is that Muslims and Jews cannot get along because of something inherent in those two religions, namely, usually it's Islam that is portrayed as the problem that serves an agenda. Our mere presence actually provides an obstacle to all of that. But it's really hard for us. I mean, it's hard to put it in words, how frustrating it is. Not just that we have to challenge this narrative, but that it comes from supposedly our sisters and brothers who, purposefully or not, have ignored our not just existence, but our suffering. And somehow try to continue even to deny our suffering as Palestinians under occupation, under an oppressive regime that seeks to displace us. And because they have bought into this Zionist narrative, that led them to dehumanize all Palestinians, including Palestinian Christians, by the way. And we will be mistaken, Sheikh Omar, to think that this prejudice against Palestinians or Arabs or Muslims stops when it comes to Middle Eastern Christians or Arab Christians or even Palestinian Christians. I can tell you so many stories of how I was mistreated, even, by the way, all of this before October 7th, and many of my colleagues by the Western Church, just by virtue of being Palestinians. This is the sad thing about Zionism, is that it is an ideology that has led to the dehumanization of an entire people group. And we're seeing the results of this today. A genocide is normalized, justified, because in the mind of the Western world, we are maybe, and many in the Western, we can't just say all, but in the minds of many, and certainly in the Zionist narrative, we are maybe less human. It's an empty land. Even when Palestinian Christians speak, hello, we exist, it is still an empty land in terms of people of equal worth. So try to think, how hurtful it is for us to be in this position. First, to plead for our existence, then for our side of the story as the victims of oppression, and then seeing how a certain ideology and theology has led our siblings to dehumanize us and our Palestinian neighbors.
I was just reflecting this past Sunday, you have churches, mega churches here in the United States with a big Israeli flag, and the pastors are shouting genocide propaganda, simultaneous to Christians being barred from their holy places or Christians being bombed in their holy places. And someone like yourself being at the center of that, having to not only deal with that back home, but having to come here and try to impress upon other Christians, what type of Christianity are you following? What type of humanity do you have? One thing that I appreciate about your discourse is that it reminds me of the post 9/11 US climate, where the Sikh community started to be targeted because people mistook them as Muslims. And many Sikhs came out and didn't say, we're not Muslims, so please stop targeting us. They came out and said, we're not Muslims, but it's not okay to target Muslims anyway. And what I appreciate about your discourse, and what I appreciate about the discourse of many like you, which I think speaks to the Palestinian spirit and the Palestinian bond and harmony that's existed for generations, is that you're not saying, by the way, as you're oppressing Palestinians or speaking about those barbaric Palestinian Muslims who are really the problem, make sure that you also, carve out some space for us as Palestinian Christians. It's interesting. What I always would say to people is that it is Islamophobia. Anti-Palestinian bigotry does traffic in Islamophobia, but not all Palestinians are Muslims. But it's the same framing, especially here in the United States, that post 9/11 framing that has allowed for a very particular framing of the Palestinian people from which no one is spared, right? If you share that Palestinian identity, you are not spared.
Absolutely, Sheikh Omar. And I realize, by the way, that by virtue of being a Christian, I have a certain advantage when it comes to the Western audience. But I can never use that to speak on the plight of Christians only. I think we lose our credibility. I will lose my credibility as a man of faith if I only protest the suffering of Christians, for example, and ignore the suffering of everyone else. To me, that's an important point. I will never just highlight the plight of Palestinian Christians as if we are special, distinct, or as if we are somehow exceptional. That's actually the ideology we're facing. That's what we're trying to fight, that everyone is equal, all lives matter the same. But I think second, we have, and this is what we tell everyone, there is no Christian solution. You cannot help Christians alone. You cannot as if continue oppressing Palestinians, but single out the Christian community, because we're Palestinians at the end of the day. Whenever I meet church leaders, and this happens a lot, by the way, who say something similar to what you said, maybe in softer tone. Yes, it's complicated. We realize there's a problem, but at least is there something we can do for you as a Christian community? And that's when I say, no. If you really are concerned about the future of Christianity in the Holy Land or in Palestine, whatever you call it, as an American Christian, you have to bring just peace. You have to bring equality. There is no future for us as Palestinian Christians under apartheid. It's plain simple. So you cannot just be concerned about the plight of Palestinian Christians and then ignore everything else. It doesn't work. Even if you are only concerned about Christians, let's just say you only care for Christians. If you really want the best for our community, then you have to end the occupation. You have to end systematic discrimination against Palestinians, because we are part of the Palestinian people.
I was watching a documentary a few years ago where there was this positioning of Bethlehem in particular as a place where Palestinian Muslims oppress Palestinian Christians. And it was deeply ironic to me as a Muslim, because we read the history of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu not wanting to pray in the church so that it wouldn't be taken as a masjid later on in history, and actually stepping away from the church to offer his prayer, and then the construction of Masjid Umar that comes after that. And the way that this documentary was framing it was that the Muslims, the Palestinian Muslims, were facing their speakers towards the church to harass the Palestinian Christians, to stop you from properly worshiping. And somehow the entire narrative of apartheid, the physical walls of apartheid and the systematic discrimination from the state of Israel was completely absent from that documentary. And it just made me think about how brainwashed people could actually be. This is prior to 2023. You know, we take great pride as Muslims and as Palestinians, right, in the history of coexistence, and the history of people being protected, of religious places being protected, of coming out of, the dark legacy, right, of the Crusades at the time. And then since then, historic churches and communities surviving, thriving, of course, not without friction at times. But at the end of the day, it says something when these historic places of worship have existed for hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of years. What do you say to someone who comes to you and says, look, in private, are Palestinian Muslims bad people? Are they seeking to oppress you? What is it like living with Palestinian Muslims? Do you need to be rescued? Because that's also the savior mentality, right? The Western savior mentality is that we have to save you from your barbaric Palestinian Muslim neighbors. How do you sort of push back on that and educate people on the history, especially of Bethlehem, which is incredibly rich with that history?
I usually say in a joking manner, if Muslims are persecuting us, we will be the first to tell you, don't worry. It's sad. It's sad because clearly it serves a discourse. And it's sad because we could be talking, for example, about how the separation wall stole land from Palestinian Christian families, how Israel is denying us, preventing us from going to Jerusalem to pray for the first time in history, to go freely. If you're lucky, the military gives you a permit every now and then to visit Jerusalem. We could be talking about the unfair, unjust family reunification laws that Israel implemented, basically to separate families. We have families that are separated because of the apartheid policies of Israel. And all we get is maybe sympathy, maybe let's have a conversation, we'll see, all of that. Maybe Israel is justified, they will tell us to do so. But then there is one minor incident in which there is friction, and frictions happen between any community. And then all of the attention gets on that incident. To me, it clearly shows that not just it's biased, but there is an agenda, as I said, that tries to frame the conflict as one between the forces of good versus forces of evil. And there's, the coining of the Judeo-Christian tradition as a code maybe for supremacy versus Islam. And to me, what's wrong is that, in the 10 Commandments, it says, do not cast a shahadat zur, false witness on your neighbor. That's why I say jokingly, if Muslims persecute us, we will let you know. And again, I'm not claiming things are perfect. But even when it comes to history, you mentioned what happened in the 7th century when Arabs came to Palestine. Less than 100 years before that, the Persians came to Palestine and they destroyed the churches. They did massacres. The Arabs didn't. Umar ibn al-Khattab, the Khalifa, as you said, decided on purpose, I cannot pray inside the church so that Muslims won't turn it into a mosque. So he prayed outside. And this has shaped the relationship between Christians and Muslims for centuries to come. And I would argue beyond that, when Jews were persecuted in Europe under the Inquisition or other, persecuted from Christians, where would they flee usually? Where did they used to flee? So the fact that, we have this powerful discourse that even managed to not just ignore and change hundreds of years of history, but even managed to put aside the evil of the Holocaust, in which, and I always say this, was it the Arabs and the Muslims who killed 6 million Jews? Was that a genocide committed by Arabs and Muslims? But the fact that it's just only 70 years ago and everyone seems to have forgotten about it, and all of a sudden it's Arabs and Muslims that are the problem, shows the power of discourse. In Palestine, we have been living together for years. People ask me, how is the relationship between Muslims and Christians in Palestine? I say, well, we've been living together for 1400 years. You think that by now we figured it out, And there is also, Sheikh Omar, and I think this is what many Westerns don't get, and I'm sure you understand this. There is the assumption that Christians are an ethnic minority or a minority that looks different or speaks different, similar to what Europeans witness in the West, the Asian minority or the African minority, or people who look different, speak different, maybe have different culture and habits. What people don't realize is not only that we're both Arabs, but maybe we as Palestinian Christians are more proud Arabs than the more Palestinian Muslims. We're so proud that we are Arabs. The culture is the same, the language is the same, the habit is the same. We enjoy the same food. And then we have years of joint struggle against oppression, colonization, and injustice that really brought us together in a strong way. And again, none of this is to deny that sometimes friction exists, but that's normal in every community. None of that says that I wish there are things I wish I could change. But let's be fair about the reality here and what the real problem is.
Reverend Wonder, are you in touch with some of those Christians from Gaza? I mean, can you talk a little bit? There was a church
this Ramadan.
You South African, of course. You anxious about the future. We've got you covered. Build on your wealth portfolio with Randry Jewelers Gold Coin Exchange. Visit us at 151 Stephen Dlamini Road, Musgrave, Durban, or call us on 031-202-4700 for more information. Randry Jewelers Gold Coin Exchange, your passport to gold investment.
With Ashraful Aid this Ramadan, your zakat changes lives. It feeds families facing hunger, restores dignity to those in need, and brings hope where it is needed most. From food relief to essential support, your zakah reaches communities with care, transparency, and impact. Give with confidence, give with trust. Make your zakah count this Ramadan. Give your zakah to Ashraful Aid and help change lives today.
When the perfect blend of stylish decor, exquisite halal cuisine, and warm hospitality come together, it could only mean Al-Bayt Lodge, your true home away from home. Al-Bayt is the ideal heaven for families, business people, and tourists with its 4-star family rooms and other luxurious facilities, conveniently situated close to Port Elizabeth Airport, the beach, and other amenities. Your stay will be truly unforgettable, as you'll be taking home lasting memories of the warm hospitality, the serenity and tranquility that Al-Bayt has to offer. For reservations, call 041-583-6415 or visit www.albaytlodge.co.za.
With so many investment options today, it's only natural that you might feel a little confused which route to take. Should I buy shares or should I invest in gold bullion? Randery Jewelers now brings you the Zahab coin, an alternative to the Kruger Rand. The Zahab coin, a solid wealth protector in its purest form of 24-karat gold, is the safest way to protect your wealth. So don't just sit there and watch your paper money depreciate. Change to gold. Call Randery Jewelers now at 031-202-4701 or visit www.rjcoin.co.za, situated at 151 Essenwood Road, Musgrave, Durban. Randery Jewelers, the family name you can trust. You are listening to Salam Media live from our headquarters in South Africa. This is Salam Media, keeping you company this Ramadan.
Welcome back. We are in the final stretch of a very important topic, faith beyond ritualism. And for this final stretch, we have with us none other than our brother in Islam, well-known and respected leader and academic, Imam Zaid Shakir. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Imam Zaid, first of all, I want to thank you for making the time early morning to be with us for this very important topic. And let's begin there with the title itself. What does this mean for you? And I regret with everything that was going on that kind of threw things off, not raising this as an opening question with Rabbi Feldman. What does this title, Faith Beyond Ritualism, what does that mean to you?
Can you quickly tell me what it means to you, and then I will be in a better position to tell you what it means to me, and not be all over the map.
Okay, what it means to me is, it emphasizes the point, the very important point from my perspective, that our religion is about more than religion as religion is commonly understood. We often refer to it as a deen, a code, a system of life and living. And part of our dilemma today, from my humble perspective, is the fact that this dynamic part of Islam is absent, is largely absent in the minds of the hearts and minds of many of us, and certainly it's absent from our communal practice of this deen called Islam, and that stripping away of this dynamic force and just reducing Islam to ritualistic observance is part and parcel of what ails us. And one example of this, one quick example of this that's very relevant to where we are right now, is that, the swelling of the ranks during the month of Ramadan in the masajid and centers. You see Muslims that you haven't seen in a while, and the ranks are just full for the salats. But then, as soon as Ramadan is ended, we see this falling away from this observance again, and so that's just one aspect of this this ritualistic approach to Islam that far too many of us have. I mean, it's something that we observe when we have our high holy days, or when something important is occurring in our lives. It could, whether it be a birth, a marriage, a death. But that dynamic force that is supposed to be holistic is largely absent, and we pay a price for that. That's my perspective. Now yours. All right, are you muted, Aki? Did you mute yourself?
I did not. You can't hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yeah. I was going to say I'll give you two. One, I think faith beyond ritualism, you could actually say we need more ritualism. I would say faith without ritualism, in the sense of what you just said. The masjid fills up the first week of Ramadan. It fills up as Ramadan goes. The ritual of Taraweeh thins out. So the 4 lines become 3 lines on day 3, and the 3 lines become 2 lines on day 5. And then from the second week until the last couple days, when people think the night of power is to be found, we're down to 1 line. And so the ritualism, in a sense, disappears. And then, as you just said, then after Ramadan, we have 5 or 6 brothers in the masjid for Fajr. So in a sense, I think you could say faith without ritualism. If we had a bit more ritualism, maybe there would be a greater consciousness being bred by that ritualism. As Allah Ta'ala mentions in the Quran, وَقِمَ الصَّلَاةَ لِذِكْرِي, undertake the prayer for my remembrance. So that's just a twist. But to go back to the actual word, so that would be faith without ritualism. Our great spiritual master Ibn Ata'illah Siskandari, in his hikam, his aphorisms, he says, Man ashraqat bidayatuhu ashraqat nihayatuhu. Whoever has an illuminated beginning will have an illuminated end. And the illumination at the beginning is actually through ritual. One who prays consistently, one who fasts beyond the month of Ramadan and engages in voluntary fasts, one who engages in other actions, that person will have an enlightened understanding of the deen. And that enlightened understanding translates into the kind of moral and ethical and positions that I think was just being discussed by the Palestinian pastor. So to me, faith beyond ritualism is exactly what you said. Is it is in the sense of Islam is more than the rituals, but the rituals have their part. The rituals are a foundation. The first thing that Allah Ta'ala would examine is not how many demonstrations we participated in, or did we rightfully and justifiably as we could. And I see your brilliant, dedicated Salam media team there in South Africa. Did we support the South African genocide case against the Zionists? So that kind of ethical, moral, anti-oppression concern in many instances has its roots in faith, but that faith has to be strengthened. It has to be nurtured so that it gives birth to sound ethical action. And to summarize, this is a long answer to a short question. If we consider Ramadan, we're in the last days of Ramadan, and as we all know, actions in our deen are based by their last. Al-a'malu bi khawatimiha. Actions are based on their last. So may this last portion of Ramadan for all of us be the best. May the languidity, the negligence that might have qualified the earlier parts of Ramadan, may that all be compensated by the passion, the energy that we bring at the end. But the one of the foundational verses when we discuss Ramadan, Shahr Ramadan, alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran, هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان. So the month of Ramadan, in which the Quran was revealed, and then three things are mentioned: Huda linnas, guidance for the people. So there's the faith, and Islam. There's no Islam without faith. That's obvious. Wa bayinati min al huda, and the bayinat, that is the law. So explicating the guidance and tangible systems of law. And then finally, wal furqan, and furqan, that's the ethics. So having a firm standard to be distinguish right from wrong. That's the essence of ethics. It's a standard whereby we distinguish right from wrong. And so the deen is all three. And I think faith beyond ritualism is going beyond the foundation in faith. But for us as Muslims, faith is, in its general description, is beyond ritual. Because faith is, as the Prophet mentioned in one hadith, al-Iman, faith, bid'un wa sab'un shu'bah, is 70 some odd branches. أفضلها قول لا إله إلا الله. So the first involves a declaration of faith. So the most virtuous, because this is the foundation, is proclaiming there is no God but Allah. أفضلها قول لا إله إلا الله. And then there's action. And it's not just action, it's social action, action that benefits others. وَأَدْنَاهَا إِمَاطَةُ الْأَذَى عَنِ الطَّرِيقِ. And the lowest branch is to remove the harmful thing from the path. And we could take that in a literal sense, and we can take that in a figurative sense. So we can literally remove, we see a branch that fell over the road, a glass jar that fell in the path that might be broken and someone can cut their feet, or a car can get a flat tire, then we remove it. So we're benefiting others. And the scholars, they say, when you remove the harmful thing from the path, you should say, La ilaha illallah, thereby joining between the most virtuous and lowest level of faith. And so, but figuratively, like we're here in the United States, and the path to peace, obviously, to a large extent, globally, is our government. So if we were to, through the organizing ourselves and taking advantage of the electoral process as others do, then perhaps we could move this harmful thing from the path. وَالْحَيَاءُ شُعْبَةٌ مِنَ الْإِيمَانِ, and shyness is a branch of faith. So there are many examples. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, surely those who believe and do righteous deeds. So you see this coupling in the Quran. This is faith, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, surely those who believe, وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, and they act beyond that. They engage in righteous deeds. لَيْسَ الدِّينُ بِالتَّمَنِّي, or in some versions, لَيْسَ الْإِيمَانُ بِالتَّمَنِّي وَلَكِنْ مَا وَقَرَ فِي الْقَلْبِ وَصَدَّقَهُ الْعَمَلِ. So faith, Iman, Deen here meaning faith. Deen has different meanings. Deen, as was mentioned, it can be our system of living. Deen can be judgment. So Maliki Yawmid Deen, master of the day of judgment. Kama tadinu tudan, as you judge others, so too will you be judged. But it can also mean faith. So here meaning faith is not a fancy or a wish. Rather, it's what takes root in the heart and is testified to by the actions. And so I think faith has to have the testimony of action, and action in the full sense of the word. Action that definitely includes ritual, because that's the foundation. That's the illuminated beginning that Ibn Ta'ala referred to. Man ashraqat bidayatuhu, the one who has an illuminated beginning, but it also has to include actions that benefit others. So our worship, that's action that benefits our souls. But and it has a tangential benefit to others, but we have to engage in direct actions to really live this deen in its fullest, to follow the prophetic path and guidance in its fullest. We have to engage in those actions that benefit others, starting with those immediate others, our immediate family members, and then working out from there until there's overlap. So the actions of a brother like our brother Mauri Saalakhan overlaps all the way with the actions of the Salam media team there in South Africa. And so eventually we will prevail, inshallah ta'ala. We will prevail, because I like to say this, and let me say this and move to the next question. I'm sure, is that a lot of times we feel overwhelmed. We look at all the corruption, the evil, the oppression, the just wanton slaughter, the disregard for the lives of and property of others, and it's overwhelming. And we wish we were that mighty river that could sweep away all of the fasad, all of the corruption. And we get frustrated because we're not that river. So we should reflect on the following, my dear brothers and sisters. A raindrop is not a river. A raindrop is not a river, but a river is made of raindrops. And so as opposed to seeing ourselves as a river, just see ourselves as a raindrop and hold together. Maintain our integrity. Don't evaporate before you hit the ground. So that once we hit the ground, we can combine with those others and others and others. And all these raindrops, they start making streams, and the streams feed into the creeks, and the creeks feed into the rivulets, and the rivulets feed into each other. And before you know it, you have that mighty river. So it starts with us, and make sure we're holding it down. We're doing what we have to do in terms of contributing to the uplift of humanity, the uplift of the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And if we do that, before you know it, that river will be there. And a lot of this stuff, inshallah ta'ala, that we see will be swept away. And a lot of it won't. Because a lot of this is the dunya. Allah said, we made some of you as a trial and tribulation. For others, will you not be patient? So we just try to do our part and come together with others who are doing their part. And inshallah, collectively, we'll have a great impact, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah. Reverend Isaac, in that piece of video that we saw of the conversation between him and Sheikh Omar, he mentioned the fact that the first church was in Jerusalem. The first church was in Jerusalem. And he also referenced the fact that, for hundreds of years, which is a fact, there has been peaceful coexistence between Muslims and Christians in the quote unquote Holy Land, in that part of the world.
And you could add Jews to that also.
And Jews, that's right. And Jews. In fact, when the Jewish communities were being harassed and attacked in different parts of the West, a significant number of them found refuge in predominantly Muslim populated lands. That's where they found peaceful refuge in security. And in fact, Rabbi Feldman attested to that in his remarks. But now we are in a state where the majority of the Christian population in Gaza has been eliminated. And even on the West Bank, Christian Palestinians are being attacked in the same way that Muslim Palestinians are being attacked, and their homes and businesses are being destroyed, and they are being detained, and a whole slew of other injustices are being perpetrated against them, as is being done against the predominant Muslim population. There's also the reality that I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but Masjid al-Aqsa, the Muslims that usually gather there during the month of Ramadan, in the thousands, are being barred from Masjid al-Aqsa this Ramadan. Masjid al-Aqsa has been closed. What are your thoughts on this? What's happening right now there in in occupied Palestine, and how this is having such destructive reverberations throughout much of the world, including right here in the United States? What are your thoughts?
I think that it's inevitable. What's happening now in Palestine is inevitable, because you have a racist, exclusivist, violent, apocalyptic ideology that is holding political power. And you couple that with, and so that would be a Zionist Jewish, and I make that juxtaposition very consciously, because not all Jews are Zionists, as Rabbi Feldman, I think, I didn't see his testimony, but I'm sure he brilliantly attested to that fact. And not all Jews are Zionists, I think. And one of the reverberations of what's happening, so you get that messianic, apocalyptic, violent, I call it Nimrodic, in terms Allah mentions in Quran, Nimrod, and Umit. I say who lives and dies. And these people have been so overwhelmed by hubris, arrogance, and a Nimrodic complex. We'll say when the Khamenei dies, or if we'll let him live, or if his son Mujtaba, the new supreme leader, if he lives or dies. And so this Nimrodic, violent, apocalyptic, messianic, whatever adjective you choose to use, when that sort of political ideology is given the reins of, or that sort of ideology is given the reins of a state, bad things are going to happen. We see this in the United States also. So that's Jewish Zionism. In the United States, many of the advocates and architects of Christian Zionism hold the reins of power. And so they're talking about Armageddon and just a total dehumanization of Muslims, and as was mentioned recently, Christians also, and their lives mean nothing. The only thing that's important is, as our Secretary of War, and a lot of people reject that and still like to call it the Department of Defense, but the Department of War. That's a more truthful appellation, whose mission, as stated by its chief, is to break things and kill people. And so when you have that sort of, and prayer breakfast at the Pentagon is given by just messianic maniacs, and the troops are being briefed by generals who also are affiliated with this apocalyptic messianic. They say Iran has a death code. This is a death code, a murderous death code. When they're given the reins of power, the sort of things you see happening now are inevitable. And it's just, we have to be firm. in resisting. Our resistance is the resistance not of bombs and bullets. It's the resistance of ideas. It's the resistance of exposing just the logical, historical, and factual flaws in the narrative that these demons have constructed. And so we see these things happen. They're inevitable, and they're being resisted. The Iranian nation, they did something, Netanyahu and Trump and their supporters, and we might add their masters. They've done something all of the Ayatollahs combined couldn't do. They've united the Iranian people. And so everyone understands now, like the youth who wanted so badly to be a part of this degenerate global youth culture that's fueled by social media, the leftists who wanted to be free from the religious constraints that a government representing a Muslim nation has lives by. Everyone except probably maybe a handful, even I'm sure a lot of the pro-monarchist people who are not inherently monarchist, but have been brainwashed by a Fox News type channel that's been beaming 24/7 to polarize them and lead them to support Reza Pahlavi, the Shah's son, who could never set foot in Iran. He could never set foot in Iran. Even those people see now that the whole protest movement, the sanctions, none of this was about liberating Iran. They were all of these movements. We could add many others to the sanction movement, the protest movement, the guise of diplomatic action to control Iran's nuclear ambitions, which they didn't have. They pursued nuclear energy like every other peaceful nation. Repeatedly, Ayatollah Khamenei, may Allah have mercy on him, said that we don't want a nuclear weapon. It's not allowed in Islam. This sort of indiscriminate mass slaughter or evisceration, not slaughter, of civilians isn't allowed in Islam. We don't want a nuclear weapon. And then an agreement verified that to be the fact. The International Atomic Energy Agency, they inspected, they verified, and indeed, all of Iran was in total compliance. But as soon as this messianic movement had a president such as Donald Trump, who can be either manipulated or just plain paid. So someone like Miriam Edelson, Sheldon Edelson's widow, gives him $100 million. That $100 million wasn't just to win the election. It was to win the election and then do the bidding of the Zionists. And so when you have these coalescing of forces, you're going to have this sort of outcome. But they didn't count on the kind of resistance that they've met. And it's a shame that the European nations, who are decrying the loss of their rule-based order, the loss of an order where human rights means something, the loss of an order where international law is the foundation of relations between states, they decry it because of the actions of the Trump administration, especially the second Trump this second Trump administration. But as soon as the rubber hits the road and there's a clear, unprovoked, brutal, vicious attack against a Muslim state, they want to send ships now against that Muslim state that's defending itself. They want to send ships. They want to deepen any sanctions. It's just the hypocrisy and the rallying of the former imperialistic forces, with rare exception like Spain. I think we should all applaud the exemplary position of Spain, that not only has refused to participate, to allow their airspace, their bases to be used, but has also broken diplomatic relations with a murderous, aggressing regime. So this sort of thing is inevitable because of the ideological forces that are in play right now.
Okay, Imam Zaid, we're going to have to go to another commercial break. When we come back on the other side, I'd like for you to weigh in on if you were in a position to give advice. You know, we have a significant number, you know, of Muslims who are in the military. If you had an opportunity to give advice to Muslim members of the military in the world, the condition that we are in today, you know, what might that advice be? I'd like for you to be able to share your thoughts on that question, inshallah ta'ala, when we come back from this commercial break. Let's go to the break, my brother.
Companion this Ramadan.
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042-203-1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
More than 800 million people around the world live in deep poverty, uncertain of where the next meal will come from. For those on the brink of starvation, a food pact means survival, dignity, and hope. Send food, send kindness. Be the reason a family does not go hungry. Donate now to Islamic Relief.
Freedom Stationery supply Marlin and Marlin Kids pens to me and my school friends. They supply just about everything we need to help us get a better education, from books to files to rulers. In fact, any any accessory we need. Freedom Stationery. Education for the nation. What does accessory mean?
This Ramadan, please consider donating to the Islamic Dawah movement. For over 45 years, IRIM has built over 80 masjids and distributed more than 160,000 Qurans in 8 local languages. IRIM has installed over 250 boreholes and water wells. Over 1,000 children are fed daily, building strong Muslim communities in disadvantaged areas.
You are listening to Salam Media live from our headquarters in South Africa. This is Salam Media, keeping you company this Ramadan.
Welcome back. We are in the final stretch of this very important conversation, part of the series that we have been doing in this month of Ramadan, Faith Beyond Ritualism. In these final moments, Imam Zaid, I'd like for you to weigh in on the critical state that all organs of our government and society find themselves in the wake of this unprecedented, in terms of wow, just the oppressive state of affairs, government structure that we're in right now. I can't remember a government in my lifetime that was as dangerous as this government is. I mean, from my perspective, we had Nixon, who was removed from office. I should say he was forced out of office by threat of impeachment that had strong bipartisan support. He was forced out of office because of the quote unquote crimes that his administration committed. But what Nixon did, in my humble opinion, it pales in comparison to what we're witnessing today. We have Christian Zionists that have important parts of the government under their control. One example being Ambassador Mike Huckabee, who just recently called for, Israel to be allowed to just do what it wants to do throughout the region, just take over the entire region, as in his twisted way of thinking, it being a fulfillment of what is supposed to have been promised biblically. So you have this madness is going on. You've got these mass indiscriminate killings, these murders taking place at the hands of our military, boats just being attacked and their occupants being killed without any due process whatsoever. And we've got the attack that has been made on Venezuela, the attacks that have been made on Lebanon and Syria, and it's just been crazy what we and most of the world is witnessing today. And we have the threats of the military, the U.S. military, which is considered to be, if not the most powerful military in the world, certainly one of the most powerful militaries in the world.
It's the strongest.
The strongest.
Unequivocally, the strongest. But strength is not power. These are two different realities.
That's a good point. Strength is not power. The strongest. And it has been unleashed in a way that it has been unleashed. And, we have, one of the points I made in a recent release that I sent out was, there's a reason why the emphasis has been always on recruiting, and when it, recruiting young, very young recruits who can be ordered, to do whatever needs to be done without, any hesitation. They hear and they obey. What would your thoughts? What are your thoughts? What advice would you give to the Muslims that are in the military right now, in an organization that is, in the estimate of experts across the board, American, European, and others from the global South, the experts across the world, they're decrying the violations of international law that are being committed right now. And we have prominent figures who were once in the military, high-ranking figures in the military, who have been advising that, military members have a right, and not just a right, but a duty to not obey unconstitutional orders. What advice would you give to the Muslims that are in the military if you had their ear right now in the atmosphere we're in?
We're all independent moral agents. I was in the military. Fortunately, at a time, one of the rare times we weren't at war with anyone. So right after Vietnam, so I went in 1976, right after the armistice that ended the Vietnam War. And I got out in 1981 before we resumed the illegal application of military force with the attempted assassination of Muammar Gaddafi, and before the invasion of Grenada and the invasion of Panama and the deposing of Maurice Bishop and Manuel Noriega, and then the revving up to Gulf War, etc. So I was blessed in that regard. I wouldn't tell any individual Muslim service member to stay in or get out. I would encourage them that we're all independent moral agents to study the situation very carefully and to understand two things. That if you believe you have a patriotic duty to serve, one thing you just articulated. You have an obligation to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign or domestic. And those domestic enemies might be in your chain of command. And in that case, you have a constitutional duty to oppose them, not to support them, and not to implement any unconstitutional orders that they give. And secondly, if you're under the illusion that serving in the military, you're somehow protecting the country, you need to understand that's a total illusion. You will only protect this country against foreign military force when the Canadian or Mexican governments become so anti-American that they'll mass millions of troops, or from that close proximity begin lobbing missiles or send air sorties against the United States. Other than that, Iran poses no threat to the United States of America whatsoever. This whole drone attack on California, all that stuff is proven to be a lie. And it's sad that it has to be proven to be a lie because it's so nonsensical. But back to the point, if you're under the illusion that somehow you're protecting the country by serving in the military, you should sober up. You're protecting the corporate interests that benefit from these foreign excursions. That's who you're protecting. It's amazing how Trump, really something we should all appreciate about Donald Trump is his honesty. 2 days ago, what did he say? If the Straits of Hormuz stay closed and the oil prices go up, we are the largest oil producing nation. We're going to make a lot of money. And back to your point, who is the we?
Yeah.
The average American, those poor white folk who are struggling in Appalachia with great poverty, living under governments that won't provide them health care because that will be an endorsement of the benefits of the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. So a state like Tennessee refuses to take money that the federal government offers, and Tennessee is one of the poorest states in the union because that will be acknowledging that President Obama did something positive. No, Obama's a war criminal also, so don't get it twisted. But that was a positive. We won't acknowledge that. And so so back to Trump. We're going to make a lot of his buddies in the oil industry who paid him $100 million to shut down all clean energy legislation. That's who the we is. And so you're protecting corporate interests. You're protecting the interests of this corporate military industrial complex that is by nature, it's a business. The only way you stay in business is by depleting your inventory. That's how you stay in business. And so the makers of the THAAD and the makers of the Patriot missile batteries and the Arrow interceptors, they're glad that we have this conflict. And they're glad that Iran has the ability, the missile capability, because it allows them to deplete their inventory and stay in business and to continue. And we should understand that. We should understand that there is no Israeli military per se. There's no Israeli air power per se. They're not following. They're not flying the Lobby fighter jet that the Israeli aerospace industry was developed and they scrapped. They're flying American F-35s. They're flying American F-16s. They're flying American F-14s. They're flying American Apache helicopters. They're dropping bombs made in America. We just are preparing to send 20,000 more bombs. All right, Israel doesn't have the industrial capacity to do what they did to Gaza, yet let alone the industrial capacity to wipe out or significantly damage Iran, that's larger than the whole European Union in terms of its geographical space. So this is the military industrial complex that our president, Dwight Eisenhower, warned us against. That's profiting from war, profiting from mass murder. And so the Israelis are carpet bombing Tehran with what? With F-35s and with US-made bombs. Every single bomb is made in the USA. And so someone in the military should understand that. And so if after searching your soul, you decide that the unconstitutional orders are so prolific and are really definitive of the military's function at this juncture, and or that I don't want to be directly, we're all indirectly involved. We live here. I shouldn't say we pay taxes. The military is largely funded by the deficit spending. And to digress a little, that's why the Gulf nations are so important. You know, they buy the oil, and it has to be transacted in dollars. And then those dollars, we say, are repatriated when those countries, after building the skyscrapers and $500 million airplanes and the other toys, the bulk of those dollars go into purchasing U.S. Treasury bonds, which finance the deficit, the budget deficits. And so if America loses those Gulf nations, and this is one of the underlying reasons for the aggression on Iran, to get the Iranians' oil to be transacted in dollars. Because as nations move away from transacting in dollars, the BRICS become stronger. And as the BRIC nations become stronger, and as more and more nations in BRICS move away from the dollar, the whole financial basis of the American imperial empire, enterprise rather, collapses. And so that's a critical part of this whole operation. And this is a critical role that Israel plays in terms of relationships with those nations, in terms of ostensibly serving as a part of the American Middle East military force. So I would say, if you, after examining everything and considering everything, you decide to stay in the military, just make sure you don't kill not just Muslims, but take a special care to make sure you don't participate directly or indirectly in killing a Muslim, but also any innocent human being. I mean, the body count from these wars, the maimed, the murdered, we're talking tens of millions since the entrenchment of the military-industrial complex. We're talking about destroying whole societies and cultures and civilizations. We destroyed the culture of Vietnam. Vietnam was an agrarian society by defoliating the forest with Agent Orange. My cousin is a general, was General Fred A. Gordon. He was the first African-American commandant of cadets at West Point. That's been scrubbed under anti-DEI. That's been scrubbed from his record on the military's website. But he was in Vietnam, and he recently passed away from cancer. He firmly believed his cancer was connected to his exposure to Agent Orange. Mm-hmm. And so what about the Vietnamese people? Yeah. What about all that land that has been poisoned by dioxins? What about the Iraqis and the massive numbers of deformed babies because of the depleted uranium used in the weaponry during the Desert Storm? And that depleted, vaporizing uranium getting in the water, the soil, and the people in the hottest conflict areas witnessing babies born with two heads and all of these horrific birth defects, to say nothing of the million dead Iraqis. You know, what about Afghanistan, the landmines? That the Soviet Union also guilty of laying all over the place, and the amputees. You know, this enterprise has to be stopped, and all of us have to oppose it, and in whatever way that we can. And collectively, inshallah ta'ala, we will have an impact. But and I think this is an inflection point for the American public, because you see now the split in the America First movement, and this is mainstream. This is a white movement, if you will. I'm still looking for some white people, the color of this napkin, but hopefully I'll find some, maybe Casper the Friendly Ghost. But, you know, it's a Caucasian American, Euro-American movement, and they are vehemently opposed to this war. And there's a big split in the MAGA movement, Make America Great Again. And that's a whole show, program to be done on just that phrase right there. But the American First movement are vocally saying to Congress, this is America first, not Israel first. And we refuse to be dragged into this war. And that's a sentiment despite the massive censorship, despite the massive disinformation and misinformation, despite that TikTok is no longer available to put the truth out there because it's been purchased by people with Zionist connections. The Zionists, even CNN, is been purchased by Larry Ellison. And so what makes this program and others so important?
Yes,
I know I went over my time.
We unfortunately we are over our time, so we're gonna have to stop here. I want to thank you, brother, for joining us, and inshallah ta'ala we'll have you back to continue this conversation soon, inshallah ta'ala. Let me end by stating this is the blessed month of Ramadan, and the Afia Foundation and the work that we do, just like any other organization, needs support. And this is one of the best times and ways for our brothers and sisters and our friends who appreciate the work that we do, the human rights work that we do, to lend support to this work. With that being said, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to close out as we normally do. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim wal Asr. Innal insana lafi kusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amalu salihati wa tawassaw bil haqq wa tawassaw bis sabr. Which means, in the translation of the meaning, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, by the token of time, through the ages, surely humanity is in loss, except those who believe and do good and exhort one another to truth and exhort one another to patiently persevere. Again, I want to thank Imam Zaid for joining us and Rabbi Feldman earlier, and leave our brothers and sisters with a greeting of peace and a hope that everyone has a blessed Eid, and that we as Muslims come out of this month of Ramadan much stronger, far more conscious and committed than we were when we entered this month. Don't allow Shaitan to throw you a welcome back party. Peace be unto you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.